Folks, we're going to keep this rolling. Next up, I get to welcome Ryan Hamlin, CEO and co-founder of POSaBIT, to the stage. Excited to hear his presentation. Ryan, I'll let you take it away. Thank you.
All right, welcome. Big audience here this morning. Thank you. I'm Ryan Hamlin, the CEO and co-founder of POSaBIT. Congrats to Ross and the gang. That's a big race. I want to give you a little bit of background about POSaBIT. We're a small cap company based out of Seattle, Washington, but we trade in Canada. And so it's great to have events like this to create more awareness of our company. We're also traded on the OTC and the CSE. At the very highest level, POSaBIT is a software provider for the cannabis industry. And you can think of us as, people always have these little niche sayings, but we're really the toast or the stripe of the cannabis industry, meaning we are all about payment infrastructure, and we are the leading payment infrastructure provider for the cannabis industry. So we'll go through that today and give you a little bit of a glimpse of what POSaBIT is. Before I start, my background, I was an executive at Microsoft for 17 years. I ran all types of product groups at the company. My last group there, I ran a team of 1,500 people and was responsible for about $500 million in revenue. So obviously I come from a long background of software history. When I show you our executive team, we're all Amazon, Google, Microsoft executives that saw a very big need in the cannabis industry, which was being underserved, which was software. And so instead of going and buying a cultivation plant or buying a retail store, we said, hey, the best thing for us to do to contribute to this industry is write amazing software. So we started the company in 2015, so we've been around a little while. Today, the company serves over 300 dispensaries in the United States. We're in 15 different US states. I mentioned we're traded on the CSE and the OTC. Our market cap is about 170 million. The company has had pretty phenomenal growth since its inception. We've doubled our revenue every single year since 2017. This year is no exception. Last year we did 7.8 million in revenue. This year we'll do over 20 million in revenue. We've had 4 consecutive quarters of EBITDA profitability, and our gross margin is about 28 to 32%. That's an area, obviously, that as we grow and we get more discounts, volume discounts on our processing, we anticipate those numbers to go up to be more like traditional fintech companies. Lastly, we'll process about 400 million in transactions through debit transactions this year, not cash. We have a POS, which I'll talk about, which obviously competes with all the POSs in the market, but we're the strongest in the payments business. I already mentioned the key milestones on the left, so I'll focus on the right. Everything you see here in white are live services that we provide to dispensaries today. So obviously, our lead product of payment processing, we have a full PIN debit solution, the only fully compliant solution in the industry that was developed over about 16 to 18 months working with acquiring banks. We have a chief compliance officer. We are registered with FinCEN as a money services business. You'll hear me say compliance many, many times because, as you know, being in this industry, compliance is extremely important. And we're proud to say that over that entire 6 years of doing business, we've never had any issues when it comes to the payment processing space. We have a point of banking solution, which frankly has kind of been out in the industry for a while and is kind of old news, and we're moving away from that. We have a great consumer ACH business as well to help with delivery and payment of products. We have a robust point of sale, like a lot in the industry, that has everything from manifest inventory management, built-in loyalty. We have great partnerships with people like Springbig and Alpine IQ for our loyalty business, directly integrated to our POS. We're one of the only ones in the industry that has a fully mobile POS. So our POS runs on a handheld device. You can literally walk around the store, the bud tender. They can show photos of the product. They can take orders from the customer, insert a debit card while they're on the floor, pay for the product, and have the product brought up front with their name called. This was obviously a huge issue during COVID and allowed us to actually bring a much safer experience for curbside payments as well as curbside delivery and ordering. We have in-store kiosks. This allows the customer that knows what they want to walk up, order what they want, and the differentiator we have is they can stick in their debit card and actually pay for it at the kiosk. Again, no interaction with the bud tender other than waiting for their name to be called to come forward. We're excited to be in beta with a cash advance program. This allows dispensaries to loan money from us in a factored loan way, so that as we process payments for them, we can actually extend loans to them and then just take a piece of that daily payout that comes through our payment processing. This system is, we're really excited to kind of roll this out very broadly. We've been running this in beta recently. And lastly, what we call POSaBIT Connect. That's an open API. We've taken the approach in this industry that we want to be an open API for all software providers to integrate. So if you want to integrate our debit payments, you can integrate our debit payments. If you want to integrate with our customer data and pull customer data from us, you can integrate at no cost to pull that customer data from us, assuming obviously the dispensary agrees to it. So we brand that called POSaBIT Connect. So for all of the service providers out there that want to talk to me, I'm happy to discuss more. The ones in blue are the services that will be coming out over the next couple of quarters. But the reason I put the slide up here is it gives you an idea of when I say we are the Stripe of cannabis. We want to provide all of those payment infrastructure components that a dispensary needs. We want to provide best in breed, so they don't have to use all of ours. They can just plug and play as they see fit. I mentioned our executive team, lots of software experience. Every one of us has 25 to 30 years in the industry at Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Yahoo. We've done small company startups and successfully sold those. We've had mid-tier company experience as well. So we're excited about our leadership team. We have a great board as well. We have several board members who have been on NASDAQ-traded companies. We have the corporate vice president of Microsoft that ran all of corporate development for about 20 years, who worked personally for Bill Gates on our board. So when it comes to M&A activity and whatnot, we obviously feel like we're set. This is a timeline. We've been around 6 years, like I said. Probably the biggest one I'll point out here, without getting into all the other details, is in April of 2019, we went public on the CSE. We did that via an RTO. In hindsight, we learned a lot through that. I think as a private company, especially when you hear about Ross raising $350 million, probably a little bit different on the valuation side. Right now we're trading at about 6 to 7 times our annual revenue, which for a company like us, if we were a private company, that would probably be more in the 20 plus range. So it is what it is, and we're excited to be traded, and we're excited to be on a path to NASDAQ over the next 12 months. As an investor, these are the questions I always get typically when I go to these events, and I like to highlight just 5 things kind of really briefly here. I said compliance over and over. That really is our differentiator. We spent a lot of time, in fact, the first year that we started this company, we didn't write any software. We literally just met with our attorneys, we met with our state legislators to really understand how could we develop a traditional merchant services business and do it in a way that was fully compliant. And so we hired, like I mentioned, a chief compliance officer. We hired Perkins Coie as our attorneys. We wrote a very robust AML policy and program. We registered with FinCEN, as I mentioned, as a money services business. Recently, we were audited by FinCEN in April of this year. And initially, that's no one's favorite words. The good news is we came out of that audit with 0 violations and 0 recommendations. So to be able to do payments in the cannabis business and be audited by FinCEN and come out with a glowing report tells you a little bit of how important we value compliance and working with our customers, because that's the last thing we want to do is anything that would ever get us or any of our merchants sideways. Obviously, the cannabis business is growing. Don't need to talk about that. You'll see that slide probably 40 times in the next 2 days. We know it's big. Digital payment penetration. If you think about the use of a traditional debit card versus cash in a cannabis store today, it's about 90% still cash. So if you think about a market of, let's say 22 billion, I think is the kind of forecast this year. If only 10% of that is going through debit, that's only $2 billion. So obviously the TAM and the market potential for us is massive at the current rate. And we all know that this industry is growing every single day and more dispensaries are coming online. I have a quick slide I'll show you about the competition. And so I'll kind of hold off on that. But obviously we believe that, we have the strongest products in the payment infrastructure market today. And then, of course, the other slide or question everyone will talk about this week is legalization. And what does it mean to companies like us that are in the merchant services space and the banking space? And I'll touch on that really briefly. So I talked about compliance. The only other thing I'll just point out on this slide that I haven't said already is that we also work with a third-party company called Shield. They help us manage compliance with all of our customers. So when we onboard a new customer for payments, they go through a very robust underwriting process. We look at owner information, we do background checks, we do credit checks, we look at EIN information, we look at marijuana violations if they have any. It's a very robust process to get through our underwriting. I jokingly say it's easier to get a home loan than it is sometimes to get approved through underwriting for debit processing, because we have to be extremely careful and make sure that every single box is checked off so that we continue to stay compliant with our banks and our acquiring merchant or merchant processor. Yes, it's a big industry. We know it's growing. That's great for us, especially as we process more and more payments. It just means as customers get used to not having to come into a dispensary with cash and be able to use a traditional debit card, that's a great opportunity for us, and I'll talk about that here in a sec. I mentioned 90% of dispensaries are cash and only 10% are debit still today. What we see is when we go into a dispensary like the Reef down in Vegas, we'll start at maybe 30% of their transactions going through our system as debit. And then over time, about 6 months later, they're up to about 40%. And then another 6 months later, they're up to about 50%. It's because customers then become used to being able to pay with a traditional debit card. So we have a lot of dispensaries that have seen massive growth in Colorado and Washington, California, and that's just all part of us going in and really kind of benchmarking where they start and then where they go. As far as competition goes, I mean, our biggest competition today is probably the ATM because it's cash only, and people still, they believe they have to come in the store with cash. Unfortunately, when you come in the store with cash or you go over to the cash machine and you pull $40 out, when you walk up to that counter to engage with the bud tender, you're now limited by that $40 that's in your wallet. With our system, obviously, you're not. You can pay with a debit card. So if you see a special or you see that, hey, it's a long weekend or whatever it might be, and you want to buy $80 worth of product, you're no longer limited by that. So we see the average ticket in our stores about double of what the average cash transaction is. Another benefit to our store owners that implement our system. But besides the ATM as competition, I mentioned already traditional point of banking or a digital ATM where you round up to the nearest $5 or the nearest $10. That system's been in the market for probably 6 years now. It's a good system. We use it. I don't want to bash it too much other than saying it definitely leads to reconciliation issues because you're giving change. Which you have to rely on human behavior to actually count the change properly and tender it out properly. And you also have to have enough change on hand to do that. And so, as we know, a lot of dispensaries, just dealing with cash is an issue. The other kind of competing solution, I will say competing, but in some ways, we're open. We partner with some of these folks as well, which is traditional ACH, where you can download an app or go to a website, put in your credit account information, routing information, and then get either a QR code or some sort of a PIN. And then when you're in the store, you can use that to pay. Those solutions are okay. They're just really hard to get adoption because consumers don't necessarily want to do that, tie personal information. They also don't want to, in the moment of making a transaction, have to step aside and set up an account. So what we find is consumers want to pay the way they pay for everything. When you buy a cup of coffee, you don't download an app, I guess, unless you're a Starbucks and you want to pay with your app. But or clothing, you pull out a card and you pay for it. That's normal consumer behavior, and that's why we've had so much success in growing our business. Federal legalization, investors ask me this all the time, what's going to happen? I would just simply say that when legalization happens, and that's a big if right now when we don't know when that is, but you will get traditional payment processors moving in, but you're not going to get them moving in day one, and you're certainly not going to see cannabis sold at 7-Eleven or on Amazon day one. We all know Amazon's coming, but I don't think they're going to jump in day one. And it's also going to be considered a high-risk transaction. If you look at past high-risk businesses, which cannabis is categorized as, they traditionally process credit cards in the 5 to 6% range. That's because there's high chargebacks. So the overall unit economics of our business doesn't necessarily change a whole bunch. I should have mentioned that the unit economics of our business is quite nice. We make 560 basis points per transaction on average. So on a $100 transaction, we make $5.60 top line revenue. So it's a good business to be in. And as this opens up, and we obviously have legalization, not only will the industry quadruple in size and the number of dispensaries, so that creates an opportunity for us to process more, but the rates are going to stay pretty consistent to where they are. This is the list of all the different partnerships we have in place today. These are people that either we've integrated with, they've integrated with us, or they're reselling our products. So obviously it's the who's who of kind of the software tech industry. We love these partners. We continue to work with all of them. Next week at MJ Biz, we'll be meeting with a whole bunch more of these partners and talking about MS Connect or POSaBIT Connect and everything that we're doing with our API. The last slide I have, leave a couple minutes here for questions. This just shows our revenue growth. So you can see, we had 3.4 million in 19. We did 7.8 last year. We're going to do, that's our guidance, 19. We're going to beat our guidance. We'll do over 20% or 20 million this year in revenue. You can see our gross profit margin percentages on the bottom. So very healthy business as far as growth goes, and a very healthy company right now with cash in the bank. And we're excited about where this industry is going. Obviously, consolidation is a big part of it, and we'll be one of the leading technology players in this space. So with that, we'll take a few questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. If there are no questions from the audience, please raise your hand if there are. But just in case, yeah, go ahead, sir. Go ahead and repeat that question if you don't mind.
Yeah, I was asking about our gross margin. Today it's at 28 to 32%. What does that look like in the future? And then I mentioned NASDAQ, and he was interested to hear more about that. Great comment on the gross margin. If you look at traditional payment processors, Square, PayPal, they're in the mid-40s. That's where we aspire to go to. There's ways we can get there relatively quick through scale. So right now, I mentioned we're processing 400 million this year. As we process more, that's going to drive our processing volumes up, and it's going to drive our costs down. So there's immediately, high single-digit savings that we can add directly to gross margin. The other is through our referral partners and our scale that we have with just building out the software. So we think we're projecting next year, we'll go out with our official guidance, but absolutely adding double-digit growth to our stock when it comes to gross margin. NASDAQ, yeah, we're on a path to uplist to NASDAQ. We've engaged already with them, and we have a team, including several of our board members, working on it. Yeah, very exciting. It's the natural next step for us. Obviously, as a U.S. company, it's very difficult to trade in Canada, and we look forward to getting on the NASDAQ.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Oh, sorry. One more quick question. We have about 30 seconds left. Go ahead, miss. So just about 30 seconds, right?
Yeah, really quick was, when there's dispensaries that need a bank account, where's the cash go? Do we hold it? Do you need a bank? The answer is you need a bank account. And we work with all of the banks in each of the states we go into, those state banks and those credit unions. They, in fact, become one of our highest referral partners because when a dispensary comes in to get a bank account, they say, hey, would you like to have traditional merchant services with POSaBIT, our partner? And then they refer us. So then we have a banking relationship that we ACH directly into.
Wonderful. Ryan, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Ryan, where will you be if folks want to ask you some more questions?
I'll be out here in the lobby, and then I'm on table 29 in the green room.
Wonderful. Ryan Hamlin, everybody from POSaBIT. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate it.